Today, I'm just going to do a kind of a short introduction to nutrition and talk about something called the plate method, which can be used for planning healthy meals. And I have my name here on the bottom and my email as well as Joanne's. A lot of these slides came from Joanne because she did this presentation last year. So thank you, Joanne, again for the recipes and the slides. I wanted to give her proper credit, of course. Okay, so you know, all of you obviously are interested in food because you're part of this cooking club. And I'm sure you've heard about nutrition, but you know, you might think, why should we think about nutrition? What is it useful for? And nutrition, of course, is the practice of the process of getting the substances, you know, the food that we need for our bodies to function on a daily basis, to do what it needs to do. So if you think about what you do in your daily life, you know, what are some of the things that you would like to get out of your daily life? And, you know, all of you are students. So one of those things might be having some energy and focus for your schoolwork, right? You want to be able to do well in school. You might be involved in sports and activities, and you might want to feel stronger in those sports, or you might want to be able to run further or have some endurance, that kind of thing. Maybe you want to have quality interactions with your family and friends. And by that, I mean, you know, you want to be alert, you want to be in a good mood sometimes. And of course, maybe you would like to have overall good health too. So all of these things are things that can be impacted by the food we eat, right? And so I hope as you learn more about cooking, you learn to cook, that not only you develop that love of cooking and enjoyment of new foods, but also incorporate some knowledge about nutrition, because the two of those, of course, go hand in hand. And food really is, that's why I got into nutrition, because I was fascinated by, you know, learning about something that can affect how my body functions and how I can do things today and also later in life as well. So, and then just to point out too, of course, your health and well-being are also influenced by other factors. Nutrition is one piece of that. So your stress level, your sleep, the amount of exercise you get, your support system, you know, your friends and family, and other lifestyle factors. But nutrition plays a big piece for sure. All right, so little mini lesson on nutrition today. So what's a nutrient? A nutrient is a substance that promotes growth, provides energy, and maintains life. And an essential nutrient is one that our body cannot make by itself. So in our bodies, you know, all these chemical reactions are happening all the time, which allows us to do things like move a muscle, like thinking, like breathing, like all that stuff. And so your body needs all these substances to make that happen. And an essential nutrient is one that we have to eat, basically, because our body can't make it itself. So there are two kinds of essential nutrients, two categories. One is called macronutrients, and those are the ones we need in bigger quantities, or specifically like grams. And then there's micronutrients. So those are the ones we need in smaller quantities, so milligrams or micrograms. So macro means big, micro means little. So that's how you can remember that. And then the macronutrients, I'm sure you've heard of protein, carbohydrate, and fat. Those are the three macronutrients, the three types of macronutrient. So protein, our muscles are made out of protein. So protein helps to build muscle and helps you recover. Carbohydrates are the main source of energy, and by energy I mean calories. And then fat is also important in our bodies. It helps us do different processes in our bodies, like process vitamins. It's good for your brain, and it also helps you feel full. So I like this diagram here because it kind of shows different types of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And there is an overlap, of course. There are some foods that have carbohydrates and proteins, or proteins and fats. And within each category, there's some that are maybe a better quality than others. You know, like for example, with carbohydrates, sugar is a type of carbohydrate, but also most fruits and vegetables are high in carbohydrates. So different qualities, right? There's some in each of these categories that you'd want to lean towards, and some that you would want to have less of in your diet. So, but just if you can remember this as a little lesson of nutrition today, then you'll know more than most adults probably about nutrition. As far as macronutrients are the big ones, micronutrients are the little ones, and then within macronutrients we have protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And then within micronutrients we have, those are the vitamins and the minerals, and we'll talk about those a little bit later, not today. So yeah, it just, if you can remember this, then it'll help you later on as you're looking at nutrition labels and things like that. Okay. And then I just want to talk about the plate method. You know, when we think about nutrition and all these nutrients, and sometimes it can, you know, we can get overwhelmed, like, oh, how am I supposed to plan a meal and get everything I need? And it's much simpler and I think more effective if we actually kind of plan our meals in a more of a visual way, in a broader way. So I like this plate method because it does exactly that. So if you think of your plate from one meal, kind of dividing it into sections, then you can see from this diagram, this is sort of what you're aiming to get, right? So about half the plate would come from vegetables and fruits, excuse me, and then half would come from whole grains and healthy protein. And then with some water for hydration, some healthy oils or fats in there, and then staying active down here. So it's just a really kind of broad way to think about, like if I'm loading my plate for dinner, you know, what kind of proportions would I aim to get? So to give you another visual, here's 3 types of meals and kind of dividing the plate, right? In this one, you know, you got half vegetables and then 1/4 protein, 1/4 starch, looks like brown rice. The middle one, same kind of thing. And on the right side, half of it broccoli and then some scallops, it looks like, and some grains on the bottom. So this, you know, you might say like, oh my gosh, my plate does not look like that at all. And I would be right there with you. Like definitely all my meals do not look like this, but I use this kind of as a mental tool for a goal, you know, like what would be great. And if one meal is heavier on the protein, then maybe next time you lean more towards the vegetables, so you can kind of balance it out between one meal and another one too. So yeah, and then just one final thought that one of my nutrition teachers taught me a long time ago. Actually, it was like the first class I ever took in nutrition. And she said her philosophy about nutrition was to focus on the stuff that you put in on your plate or in your meals, and not focus on the stuff that you want to exclude. And I really like that because I think it just like cooking, like it allows you to focus on trying new things and sort of the positive aspect of nutrition, right? Instead of thinking about the things that you can't or shouldn't have, things like that. So anyway, so that's all I wanted to talk about today. I do have in these slides, Joanne last year put together this nice list of sort of different categories of proteins and carbohydrates and fats. And so I'm not going to go through this today because it's like, you know, it's very long, of course, but I'm going to leave it in these slides just in case. And I think we'll make these slides available in case anyone has that question of like, well, okay, I want to include healthy proteins. What is that? So, so I'll include that in the slides as well. The first step, I'm going to drain my tofu. And with this recipe, Joanne, I remember her saying last year, it's super simple. And I think a lot of recipes you'll find with tofu, you have to really dry the tofu or do some more preparation. But this one, you can really just drain it, and we're going to cut it from that state. So I'm gonna turn around to my sink and cut open the container. All right, so I got one block there. I'm doing two, like I said. So I have my blocks of tofu. So now we're just gonna cut them into squares, and you can make them whatever size you like. If you like them to be smaller, like bite-sized squares, that's fine. If you'd rather have sort of rectangles, that's kind of what I'm gonna do. So hopefully you can see. But the recipe says to cut them 2 inch by 2 inch. Again, that's your choice. The 1/2 inch thick is probably a good guideline just for the baking portion of it. So what I do with tofu usually is I go, as far as thickness, I think it ends up being about 1/2 inch thick. I go down the middle, and then I cut that in half, and then I cut each of those in half. So I end up with, I think that's a little less than 1/2 inch thick, but that's fine. I end up with 8 slices. Like that. And then I'm going to cut mine. Sometimes I just cut it one way down here, and then I would end up with squares. I think I want to make mine a little smaller today, so I'm just going to do thirds this way. And this can be very, you know, it doesn't have to be exact at all. So I ended up with little squares like this. Like I said, if you wanted to cut these smaller, depending on how you like to eat them, that's totally fine. All right, and I'm going to do my other block of tofu. Hopefully everyone's slicing their tofu okay. And I don't know if many of you cook with tofu a lot, but it's really a nice versatile food, right? It's vegetarian, obviously, but it's like this recipe and other recipes too. It really kind of absorbs the flavors you give it, whether it's with a sauce or right on the tofu. So it's a nice ingredient to cook with. Okay, so I have my 2 blocks cut. Pretty simple. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to place those on the baking sheet. And it's like a tofu puzzle here. So if they don't touch, then you'll get better sort of crisping of it, I believe, as we cook it. Okay, so mine's pretty good there. I have a lot on mine because I'm doing 2 blocks. Okay. So the next step, we're going to sprinkle salt and pepper over the tofu and then dust it with cornstarch. So the cornstarch is going to kind of give it a little crispiness. So this recipe is nice because it's not exactly the same, but it produces a tofu that's sort of like a fried tofu, but it's a lot simpler, a lot less messy. So that cornstarch, which Joanne introduced that to me last year, is a nice trick for making it get that crispiness. So first, if you'd like to do salt and pepper, you don't have to, but you can just sprinkle it. Depends on what flavor you like. So there's a couple ways you can do this. One is just to take a spoon or even your fingers, right? And you don't need a whole lot, but just kind of, here, I'll do it. Sprinkle it. Doesn't have to be super even. It's going to kind of absorb on that tofu, especially if the tofu is still wet. If you have a little strainer thing like this, then that makes it a little more even. And you can kind of like dust it. Okay, so now for the peanut butter. So the recipe calls for 1/2 cup of the peanut butter. I have this, I'm not going to measure mine because I'm kind of using the bottom here, and it looks like it's about 1/2 cup to me. So I'm just going to go with that. But if you would like to measure yours, then the recipe asks for half cup. I'm just gonna scoop my peanut butter out. Oh wait, am I not going in the order? No, okay, no. Okay. Okay, I'm reading the instructions. To a medium mixing bowl, add starting with the amount at the lower end of the measurement range. I don't know if I'm following that exactly, Joanne, but I'm starting with my peanut butter.
It's very forgiving.
I figured. I think basically we just mix the ingredients. So forgive me if I'm butchering your recipe, Joanne.
It's okay. It's all to taste.
Yeah, nice. Peanut butter out. A little bit messy, but that's all right. Okay, so I got my peanut butter. Okay, soy sauce. Let's see, so 1 to 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So, and all this, like, there's a little bit of a range, like Joanne just said, it's all to taste. So you can add up on the lower end, and then as we mix it up, you can taste it and see if you'd like more salt or more sweet, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna do, I think I have a little bit more than half cup of peanut butter. So I'm gonna do like 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce and see how that goes. Okay. Next, I'm going to add the maple syrup. So again, that's 1 to 2 tablespoons. I'll do 1 to start, well, maybe a little bit more. Like I said, I have a little bit more than half cup peanut butter. Okay. And then the chili sauce, if you have that. So the recipe asks for 1 teaspoon. If you have it as a chili sauce, I'm going to do just a couple shakes of red pepper flakes here. Make it a little spicy. And then the lime juice. So 2 to 3 tablespoons of lime juice. I'm going to use rice vinegar. I'll just start with 1. Okay, and then whisk to combine. Add water a little at a time until it's thick but pourable, until you get a thick but pourable sauce. So, all right, I see somebody whisking and someone squeezing a lime. So probably going to be thick at first because of the peanut butter. Yeah, mine's super thick. I'm going to add some water. Just add a little bit of water at a time. It helps it mix well, and then you don't end up adding too much. It's still really thick. Pretty thick. There. Starting to get to be pourable. Hard to show you, but yep. So you can make it whatever consistency you like. You might want it a little thicker. You might want it more like a pourable sauce. Okay. And now is when you can taste it. So yes, mine's very strong peanut butter. I don't think I put in enough of the other stuff, so I'm going to add a little more soy sauce and a little more vinegar. And more maple syrup. See how that goes. Yeah, that's good. I want a little more vinegar. And maybe a little more spice. I'm happy with mine.